Hi friends, today we're talking about words which end with ed. This can be a challenge for many people. Some of my students, when they first join my course, they send me recordings where they pronounce it as ed. The first thing I want to cover in this lesson, yes, we're jumping straight in today. We're not having some BS conversation at the start. We're jumping straight into this. Don't say ed. Okay, so we don't say want ed. We didn't say look ed. We didn't say love ed. I mean, I don't really hear those mistakes very much, but wanted, I do hear quite a lot. And we want to avoid that. So that's the first thing. Do not pronounce it as ed. There are three ways of pronouncing ed endings. We have t, which is an unvoiced consonant, like in to, test, t. For example, look, looked, looked. We have the voiced consonant d, the same articulation as the t sound, but we're using our vocal cords, so it becomes a voiced consonant, d, like in do or don't. Beg, for example, begged. And then also we have id, which is a combination of I, like in sit or it, and d, which is the sound we just talked about, like in do and don't, the voiced consonant. So id, in a word like want, wanted. So we have t, d, id. Those are the three ways of pronouncing ed endings. Sounds simple, right? The problem is, when do we do them? And something I just need to quickly pause and talk about to make this easier for you is I want you to stop looking at words in their spelling form. Start thinking in phonetics, because that's going to help you with your pronunciation so much. So when I'm saying, for example, that a word ends with a vowel sound, let's take the word play, for example. Yes, in the spelling, it ends with a consonant, right? A Y. Instead, we're saying play, A. And that's a diphthong, A. So stop thinking in spelling. I want you to start thinking in phonetics. If you're improving your pronunciation, that is the key. Right, let's start with probably the easiest one, which is the t sound. T. We would do this when a word ends with an unvoiced consonant. For example, book. When you book an appointment, right? So let's say we're saying this in past tense. I booked an appointment. Booked. Okay, so what we're doing here is, because book ends with an unvoiced consonant, I'm not using my voice when I produce a k sound, book, k. If I used my voice, it would be bug, g. What we're saying here is book. I don't think bug is actually a word anyway. So book, k, booked. Now the other challenging thing about this is it's what we call a consonant cluster. A consonant cluster is when we have more than one consonant together and we have to join them. Now, I don't have time to talk about that in this lesson today because that's a whole other topic. I have a whole chapter about this in my course. Maybe I'll do a video about consonant clusters in more detail in the future. But for now, let's just focus on the question, which is ed endings. When a word ends with an unvoiced consonant, we will pronounce it in an ed form with t. Booked, looked. What about when a word ends with a voiced consonant? For example, believe. It ends with a voiced consonant, v, so it's not f, which would be the unvoiced version, an F. Instead, it's v, believe. So if we're going to turn that into past tense, believed, vd. Again, a difficult consonant cluster, but we have to do it. Believed. So we're joining a v and a d together. Vd, believed. A word ends with a voiced consonant. We turn it into an ed ending and it turns into a d sound. So where does id come into this? Well, we've talked about t and we've talked about d. So what about when a word ends with a t or a t sound, or when the word ends with a d sound? For example, want. So want ends in an unvoiced consonant, right? But that unvoiced consonant is a t sound. And we've said that when there's an unvoiced consonant, to turn it into an ed ending, we do a t sound. So it would be want. That's not right. So what we actually do is we use id instead. Wanted. Now remember, it's an I sound, not an E sound. So we don't say wanted, Don't look at the spelling, instead think about phonetics. It's id, wanted, brand, branded. Okay, so with a t or a d at the end of a word, it will be id. But what about words which end with a vowel sound if we want to turn them into a past tense form? For example, play ends with a diphthong, a. This isn't a consonant. So what do we do here? Simple. If a word ends with a diphthong or a vowel, we turn it into past tense, we use d. Played, played. Tried. Again, try ends with a y, but it's not a consonant sound, it's a diphthong, I. Tried. Trust me, if you just do a bit of practice with this, it will get more comfortable and you'll start to understand it more and the muscle memory will kick in, but it is something you need to spend some time thinking about. I'm going to say words now in their present form, and I want you to immediately say after me how you think it would be in their past tense ed form, and see if you get it the same as me. I'll give you a few seconds after each word. Warn. Warned. It ends with an n voiced consonant, so that means we will use the voiced d sound. Remember, voice and voice, unvoiced and unvoiced, t or d, then it will be id. Fake. Faked. It's an unvoiced consonant, so it will be a t sound. Create. Created. It ends with a t sound, so it will be id. Created. Scrape. Scraped. Because it ends with a p unvoiced consonant, it will be a t sound. Study. Study. Think about what it ends with. It ends with a vowel sound, study. So remember what I said, if it ends with a vowel sound, it will be d. Studied. Studied. So what I recommend you do now is you make some lists of words you use a lot in your day-to-day life, particularly verbs, and then I want you to turn them into past tense ed endings, and I want you to practice using the techniques I've given you today to try and find how it should be pronounced. Maybe make some short sentences with them as well, and try and combine a few of them in a paragraph so that you can practice doing it. Then I would recommend you try and do some practice where you're not thinking about it. The words aren't there in front of you. Instead, trying to do some free speech or even reading something that you haven't read before so you don't know what words are coming up next, and trying to make sure that you pronounce those ed endings correctly. And if you're not sure, check. A common issue I notice here is when students watch my videos on YouTube, they say, well, Elliot, I've studied it now, I know it, so I guess I'll be fine. It's far from the truth. The problem is with pronunciation, we learn something, but then we have to practice it. So make sure that you have a teacher like myself, a course or whatever, someone that you're working with or you can practice with, where you can be corrected and be helped so that you are continuously working on what you've studied. Studying is the first step. The next step is then practicing and building muscle memory so it becomes something that you don't need to think about. So you can join my course if you'd like to work with me directly, and go to etjenglish.com and we can work together on your accent reduction, pronunciation improvement, even trying to work towards a RP, modern received pronunciation, British accent. I guess that's it from me today. I hope this was useful. Please share your lovely comments below because I always enjoy reading them. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers guys. Bye.